you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, David-Jack. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
All right, you look very cozy in the morning there.
I am, and I've got my dog next to me as well.
Oh goodness, what's the doggy's name?
His name's Milo.
Milo. What a pretty baby he is. That's
It's one of
great.
the top 10 most common dog names in the world.
Really, Milo?
Yeah,
Huh. Well, I know there's that movie, but I didn't know it was the top 10. That's pretty awesome.
yeah. I didn't know either, otherwise I would have chosen something else.
Yeah. Wanted to be you don't want to follow those blind lists like that. Like the top 10 baby names. Someone's going to be naming their kid Apple or something. You don't want that.
Of course. Apple's the best name ever.
Oh man. This is great. I am so glad that we found time to get together and to meet. And I already told Stuart how much I appreciated him connecting us. So this is great.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I didn't quite know what to expect. I'm not really used to doing this sort of stuff, so.
Well, I'm a professional, so I just like doing I'm a pretty laid back guy. I don't really take too much seriously. I don't take myself seriously. And I started this podcast because I've met so many wonderful writers through Instagram. And I was just amazed at the variety of genres and styles and passion that these people had. And I thought, I gotta find a way to not only get to meet them and talk about them, but have them showcase their work. And
Yeah, that's
I
great.
yeah, well, thank you. I just really have come to enjoy this format. We're talking with people, getting to know them, and allowing them to kind of just share who they are. I love
Yeah.
that. So good. Well, that's cool. Well, I've got some good questions for you, and I guess if you're ready to go, we can
I'm ready to go.
we can do this thing. Excellent,
Let's
excellent.
do it.
All right. Hey, this is Mark Justice, and welcome back to Between the Lines. Tonight, kiddies, we've got a very special interview. My first interview from Australia. This is very exciting. They're in the future. He's 16 hours into the future, so I'm going to get the lottery numbers tonight and become a millionaire tomorrow. David-Jack Fletcher is a horror writer, and welcome to Between the Lines, David-Jack.
I guess I should say g'day, mate.
Because yeah, right. I didn't want to do one of those kind of like Aussieisms that have been, in our American popular culture for like the last few decades, ever since we got Crocodile Dundee, and the Irwins, Crikey, mate, and shrimp on the old Bobby. And
which is actually incorrect. We don't have shrimp, we have prawns.
See, I love that. See, and then he goes, Americans don't know anything. That's what I love about this. This is great. And then really the main other export we've had, a couple other big exports, the band Men at Work.
Yep.
Yeah, and Mad Max. There we go.
So, well, there are some good metal bands too. There's an upcoming metal band called North Lane. I don't know if you've heard of them, but they're Australian, so keep an eye out on those guys.
Yeah, do you know them? Do you know them personally?
No, a friend of mine is connected to them.
Oh, well, tell your friend to talk to them. Get in touch with me. We'll have them on Heavy Metal Horror. I'd love to talk with them.
Will. Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah, if they're if they're up for it. Yeah, we'd be happy to. That'd be awesome. Well, excellent. Yeah, so welcome, and thank you for spending your morning with me.
Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit nervous.
Well, I hope that through our conversation, that nervousness will just kind of melt away, and we'll just be two friends talking.
Well, that's what I'm hoping.
Yeah, excellent. Well, let's talk. Let's just kind of start with like a big picture question. I like starting off with these, just kind of a broad way to kind of get to know people. But like growing up, what were some of your favorite books, or some of who your favorite writers were, like when you were a kid?
Okay. Do you know the author K.A. Applegate?
No, I don't.
So she did this book series called Animorphs. It's not horror, it's sci-fi about an alien invasion. And these teenage kids get kind of mixed up in it, and they find this blue box that when they touch it, it gives them the ability to absorb DNA from any animal that they want.
Oh,
And so
nice.
they morph into these different animals and try and stop this alien invasion.
I love that.
So it was really cool. And there was a very
Yeah.
short-lived TV show on the ABC over here.
Okay.
It lasted
Nice.
about a half a season.
Uh,
But yeah, so the books were just definitely my cup of tea.
sure.
I kind of felt like the characters were my friends in a
Yeah.
weird way, and I was like, no, when something bad happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very cool series.
That's awesome. I love that when we're children, that boundary between reality and fantasy is like doesn't exist.
Mm,
It's just like it's just as easy to believe something that happens in a book as something that happens on the news or whatever. You're just it just happens. And I love that you were connected to those characters. Was that the first time you remember kind of feeling something for a character you had read in a book?
yes,
Mm.
yeah.
Mhm.
And when I started doing my own writing, I found that most of my characters were named after those guys.
Nice. I love that. That's fantastic. We all start writing through imitation in some way.
Mm,
One of my favorite writers as a teenager was Robert E. Howard. He created the character of Conan. He was a sword and sorcery writer, did a lot of fantasy. And so my first bad attempts at writing were trying to emulate him. And he was a
yeah.
poet, and it was very dark themes, and not quite H.P. Lovecraft. That didn't come until my 20s. But I'm thinking, yeah, I can write this. Sure. You know, it's just utter garbage, So
Well, you got to start somewhere.
exactly, that's it. And that's it. That's it. You have to start somewhere until you find out how you want to say things.
Yeah, yeah.
You're and that takes a long time to find your voice, or however you want to say, and that's all good. The very first character I remember, or the book that moved me emotionally, was Mysterious Island, Jules Verne, and
Yes.
the character, of Captain Nemo, and the end when Captain Nemo, the whole the bad ending when he's going to die. I just found myself just like crying, like, oh my god, because I sympathized with this character. I kind of got why he did what he was doing, and I understood him, and I didn't think he was the bad guy. And I just thought, what a tragic end to this kind of
Mm,
beautiful character, and that was the first time I remember being like moved. um Maybe the only other time was through a cartoon, Charlotte's Web. I think maybe that was the first time I was like moved, like, no, Charlotte, I don't want you to die. That damn pig doesn't deserve you.
many of us share that. I could tell
Yeah,
you.
right. And I thought she was drawn so beautifully. She was so pretty,
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's great. um so what was it that attracted you to the horror genre?
Well, this is probably not going to be what you're expecting,
I don't have any
but
expectations at all, David-Jack. I'm just like, I think the more interesting answers are often the ones that are more exciting, like off the wall, unexpected. So just just tell it, you know.
well, I'll try to make it as exciting as possible. But okay, so when I was a kid, I was that classic scared of everything kid. So, which is why I ended up kind of hiding in books and things to begin with.
Sure.
And I played chess a lot, very solitary activities.
Yeah.
Um, and then one day I was about 15, and I'm one of four children and two parents, so family of six, and they were all sitting around watching Scream, the
Okay.
very first one, which
Yeah.
is now, it's a great movie, but it's
It is.
laughable.
Yeah, and it's
You
so
know?
much. It's very entertaining. It's very well done. It's smart.
Yeah,
Yes.
it is. And I was terrified. So much so that I had to sleep with the light on at 15
Nice.
because I used to share a room with both of my brothers. And then when I started sleeping in a room by myself, it was a little bit difficult to adjust to that. And so
Sure.
then on the back of that was Scream. And I was like, Ghostface is after me. Like, he's gotta come and get. And so my dad came in.
With
This was
wearing a
about
ghost face. He was telling me he was
No.
wearing no. I'm talking about he's got to pay for my therapy bills now, right?
No, I mean that would have been amazing. But no, it was about 2 a.m. and he comes in and he's like, "What the heck are you doing? Why is the light on?"
You can swear, it's okay. We say
Oh,
all the
okay,
words
cool.
here, so yeah, swear it up, man.
So he's like, "What the fuck are you doing? It's 2 a.m. Your light is on, and you're in bed crying." And I was like, "I'm scared, Dad. I'm scared." Anyway, about a week later, I was able to sleep with the light off. And then I come home from school, and what are they watching?
Scream.
The Exorcist.
Oh, The Exorcist. Yes,
The
yes,
Exorcist.
yes. Fantastic.
And I'm sitting there, arms folded, like I can do this because I'm a big kid now. I can do this. And and I'm not even religious, so I don't go in for the devil and God and all that stuff.
Yeah,
But it scared the absolute crap out of me.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And where she's walking through the kitchen, and you see the little like shadow of the demon's face.
Yeah, right on the
or
grill
something.
over the oven.
Yeah, on the grill.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, please. Like, anyway. So again, we have the light on in the bedroom.
The radio
And-
on, right? You find a cross on a Salvation Army. Yeah, I need to buy this cross. I'm sorry.
I kind of like looked at myself and just went, what is wrong with you? Like, sure, you can be scared, but to be scared so much so that you can't sleep, you've got to have the light on, you're jumping at literal shadows.
Yeah.
And so for me, that wasn't the kind of person that I wanted to be.
Sure.
And so I started watching more horror and reading some horror and kind of, using it as a bit of character development.
Right. You're desensitizing yourself a little bit, right?
I don't know if it's desensitizing, but more just like understanding that there is that boundary between fiction and reality.
Okay.
And that just because I see something, it doesn't mean it's going to try and come and kill me.
Sure.
Like, it's not like I've invoked Candyman or something.
Like, I'll say it twice, but that's it.
Yeah. So, and then I just started to really love the genre and all the things that it does, and the commentaries that it makes about society and cultural things.
Good horror can do that, right? Good horror really can be used as a vehicle, every bit as much as science fiction can be used as a lens to look at society and culture. Like the George Romero series, like Night of the Living Dead, especially Dawn of the Dead, where it's really poking at consumer culture, and kind of making fun of that rampant consumerism,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I kind of I realized as well that that the more I kind of got used to that, the less I was scared of things in real life.
Okay.
So I could stand up for myself a little bit better and didn't take people's shit so much.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I play chess. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, fuck you. Knight takes queen, bitch. Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
well, good for you.
Yeah. So and now I came to kind of realize that horror is that it's not the only genre that does it, but it's one of the main genres that explores the other. Sections of society that othered, queer spaces and things like that. And I absolutely love that.
Sure.
So it's that's kind of one of the reasons why I ended up getting into writing like gay horror.
Yeah. That's an interesting term that you use. I would definitely want to talk about that. As because that kind of lens is again often used in science fiction, the sense of the other.
Yeah.
But we're seeing that more and more with horror, like from the movies with was it Peele,
Jordan Peele.
Jordan
Yeah.
Peele.
Yeah.
I think was it the movie was it Us?
Us.
Us? Oh,
Get Out was the one
or Get Out. Maybe it was Get Out.
where he
Or
went to
no.
the family's house and they were all white,
Oh my God,
and they tried
that
to.
film, I could feel it. It was so effective and made me feel so uncomfortable.
It was
And
very
just like,
emotionally driven
yes,
too.
yes, like my skin's crawling just thinking about it because of the terror. It didn't have to be a monster out there. It's the
Mm,
monster wearing my skin color, you know.
mm.
It's the monster within us, and which has been really prevalent. I think we have to thank Psycho for bringing that monster to the forefront,
Yeah.
so, and Ed Gein, there's American serial killer know-how at work. Thank you, Ed Gein, for inspiring Psycho and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and yay and
Woo.
Silence of the Lambs. No, that's great. So by now, are you coining this term gay horror, or are
No.
you okay? Because I've not heard that term
Oh,
before.
well, yeah, I am coining it then. No, I don't know.
No, I mean, I don't know. I've not heard of it. I mean, I know other people who've done what in the States we call queer studies, and that's
Yes.
part of the whole spectrum of the LGBTQ plus, not just writers and producers of genre who are in that continuum, but the study of through that lens. And so I've not heard gay horror before. I thought, well, maybe it's a term that I'm not familiar with, and that's so I was just going to
Well,
ask you about that.
now I'm not sure,
Okay.
but
Just
I
just
just
own it,
know
man.
that.
Just own it. Yeah, that's mine.
Well, when I go looking for particular content, um, there is on IMDb, say, the tag for a certain film might be gay horror or gay vampires or something, and it's just that
Okay.
they just put the gay prefix on it, so certain audiences will go, oh, okay, so it's not just
Sure.
another boy meets girl and
Right.
then sucks the blood from their neck.
Sure.
So,
Right. Boy meets boy and sucks the blood from his neck, right? Kind of thing.
yeah, maybe.
Well, see, I know in the States, and again, and could be because we're trying to deal with all these things as a society in our culture too.
Yeah.
We're trying to adapt because we have that lovely puritanical burn burn the witch
Burn the books.
that we've burned the books, burn the witches, that we've been trying to overcome for the last 600 years. And what I'm finding is that through there is a caution of trying to represent people on the LGBTQ plus, but in horror and in genres, but we're also trying to say we don't want to make them the monster, because we have seen depictions like that. Like people are giving kickback to Psycho because Norman Bates is a cross dresser, or at least wearing his mom's clothing to play that role of the mother. And there's a fear, a backlash that this is going to portray people in that community as the monster. And but I don't see that as much as like we're giving, I say so I think we're just trying to find our way through that. How can we find
Yeah,
representation without bringing about another stereotype that we then will have to smash down the road,
that's a really tricky one to navigate, because you're right. I mean, if every gay character was the bad guy or the monster, then definitely that creates a stereotype and an actual trope, right? But
yeah,
what I'm trying to do with my work is I want to have gay characters, but the focus is not on their sexuality.
Yeah.
So they
because
might
they're
already
whole
be married
people.
or something.
Yeah.
And so it's just normalizing it and bringing that into the public eye
as one aspect of a whole person.
Exactly. And then I think if we do that, we're allowed to make them just like other people
Right.
who are flawed and who might be evil, because
they're just evil and they just happen to be gay.
I've met some pretty evil gay people in my time. So I'm actually working on a novel at the moment where I'm doing that, and I was having a conversation with some friends, and they said, "Oh, you can't make them the bad guy, because what sort of message does that send?" And I thought, you know what? Anytime we make a straight guy the bad guy, no one bats an eyelid. But what do you say about straight men in general?
What about us?
You know,
I'm tired of being the bad guy.
Those poor straight men.
Right. We're just having so hard now in our lives. The straight white guys. My God.
But I actually kind of think the more that we exclude characters from being able to do certain things and to be certain things, the more problematic that actually is.
Sure.
Because back when Psycho was first produced, society at large was scared of homosexuality. Now we're not. So I don't really see how it would be a reflection on or a social commentary of any kind. It would just be, this guy's gay and he's evil.
He's a serial killer. Right. In a way, that would be like the ultimate sense of acceptance. They're just a part of normal society. They're just part of, I mean, if we're going to take it to the farthest end, like that could be an indicator of utter acceptance. Yeah, he's a serial killer who just happens to be gay, or she happens to be a lesbian, or
that's
bisexual.
Kind of what I'm going for.
Okay, I like that. Because we're still flopping around with these heavy-handed, like, there's been all this furor about one of the Superman comic books where Superman's son is at least bisexual, if not gay.
Yes.
And so there's this uproar that happens with this, and what being in part of the culture. And again, I'm just when I'm just ferreting out like responses, I'm just trying to look and see what the range of responses are. It comes as less of the fact that he might have a different sexual orientation, and it comes off as smacking that, well, DC has to do this. Like, we're just going to do this because we have to have representation, and just arbitrarily picking a character to become gay now, which they have done with their Golden Age Green Lantern. Like, all of a sudden he's gay now. Like, wait a minute, I've been reading this guy's, the Golden Age stuff since the 40s, and like, now you're going to tell me he's gay? Now, as a comic book fan, I find that offends me, because like, just make a gay character.
Because it messes with the actual history of the character.
Exactly. It's
not about the sexuality.
Right. It's not respecting the boundaries of the fan.
And I think this is where a lot of people tend to get confused, because like, you're allowed to be upset about that. That doesn't make you homophobic. What it means is that you've got great respect for that character, and you've been immersed in that history for such a long time that you're like, wait, how can they just do this to me now?
Right, because it was felt so arbitrary. But then you have other characters who are gay from the get-go, like the Midnighter, and who's like a Batman type of character. And he's gay. It's like, that's fine. That's who he is. This character was made, and this is how he has always been. And so I think in American culture, we're trying to find these in routes to this sense of inclusion, but it's being done in ways that are just sloppy. Like, now we're doing the thing with like, well, Wonder Woman is probably at least bisexual because she's was on a island with a bunch of women, and I'm like, tell me more. I mean, I'm like, well, duh. I mean, the whole mythology, the Isle of Lesbos, all these things, like, but because she was created in the America of the 1930s and 40s, and we're talking about a very straight, hetero culture, that was the homosexual culture was hiding in the closet. I think it's just infancy. We're just baby stepping our way to finding some way of doing it that feels normal and natural, and I think these ugly steps have to happen first before we get to a point where it's just who we are as a society. There are gay people. No duh.
Yeah, I think. I think part of the problem is that a lot of the time it's happening, particularly in Marvel and DC, because the companies think that that's what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And no, it's not necessarily wanted from what I'm gathering with people I've chatted to and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you said, it comes across as quite arbitrary.
Yes.
And it's not. But so I think with someone like Wonder Woman, say they do another Wonder Woman movie, which no doubt they will. If there was a scene where she just like, kissed a woman or something, that is, to me, that doesn't mean anything really.
Mm-hmm.
Like she could be gender fluid or
Sure.
whatever, but it also doesn't make sexuality the focus. And this is what I was saying before, where there's such a focus on this person has to be gay and this person can't be gay, and this this one has to be bisexual because we don't have enough of a percentage of bisexual characters anymore.
Right.
And I just think acknowledging, okay, they happen to be whatever, but it's not the story.
Yes.
It doesn't drive the story. And I think a lot of the time what we're seeing these days is that the sexuality is driving the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And to me, that makes it less realistic and less entertaining. As a gay audience member myself, I'm like,
right.
Can't we just
yeah. Well,
I'm sure there will be lots of people who disagree with me on that, and that's fine too.
Sure.
But for me, as a viewer and a consumer, I think there's certainly a place for that sort of story, like the coming out story and things, which can be really powerful, but we don't necessarily have it all the time.
They're necessary, I think, to have that, because just like the big story that most women I know who, as growing up as girls, when we were children, almost every female I know read Judy Blume, Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret. This is that coming of age book for girls. And so those kinds of stories that lets people know, because that's an awkward time anyway, and you're embarrassed by everything. You don't know what you're supposed to ask, and all these things. And those stories are important to have, and I think that what we struggle with in the States is, again, because the very nature of the foundation of this country as this kind of puritanical nation and how sex has been regarded, it's just steeped in our cultural mindset. We can't really escape it. We're trying, I think, but we can't. That's just foundational to who we are. It's almost inextricable from who we have been as a culture. And I think we're just going through these growing pangs. It's going to take a couple generations before we figure it out. But that's good. I like that. Just tell me a good story. Give me a good character.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
I've had not backlash, but people just challenging me saying, well, what's the benefit of making them gay? And I say, well, what's the benefit of making them straight?
Right.
Like, what's the actual difference? Because to me, it doesn't matter. And if it doesn't matter, then why not?
Yes.
So,
right. Yeah, unless you're writing like the next 50 Shades of Gay or something like that.
That sounds like a bad porno.
Right. I mean, but because that's all about sex. And so if that's what you're writing, then I could see it being a prominent part of what you're doing. But otherwise, I agree with that. It's like, we try to just give me a good character, give me someone I can care about, give me a story that moves me and makes me feel something. And then just let it go with that,
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, what drew you first into wanting to write? You've gone from horror, watching this, understanding, appreciating the genre. So what was the moment where you said, I think I want to start writing?
I've been writing since I was very young. So because I used to read, I don't know if they do this in the US, but we had like this like book program for when you're in your, grade 1 and things. And I think I read about 50 books a week. Of course, they were like 10 pages. They weren't like novels, but and it just kind of I was actually very rarely satisfied with the endings. And so I kept saying to my mom, like, they should have done this. And I'm pretty sure it was my mom that just said, why don't you have a go? And then there was this movie, Mac and Me. You've got to have heard of this movie.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The one that McDonald's produced, and
Right.
it's awful, but
yes,
it's so
yes.
great.
Let's do the heavy-handed placement. Right. Product
and,
placement.
And I couldn't get that out of my head because I thought this movie, the ending where they ride off in the sunset in their Corvette or whatever it is, their Chevy, and I thought this doesn't make any sense. How can they just become American citizens? And so I rewrote the movie. That was the first time that I really remember engaging in writing seriously.
Nice.
And I was like, and it was still called Mac and Me. I hadn't changed that. And yeah, and there were FBI agents, and the family was getting hunted and all sorts of things. And I was probably only about 11.
Oh, that's great.
And the next thing was a class exercise where we had to rewrite Little Red Riding Hood in any way we wanted.
Oh, nice. Okay.
And so I, again, was probably about 11, and I made Little Red Riding Hood the villain.
Nice.
And so it was like well before Hoodwinked came out.
Sure.
And I was like, they stole my idea, but
sons of bitches.
And everyone in the class loved it, and they and from there everyone kept kind of saying, any new stories. And so I kind of just thought, this is what I want to do. You know, the feeling I get when I'm writing something and creating a character and deleting some of their dialogue because they just wouldn't say that.
Yeah.
It's just that it's, you know, it's undescribable. And so, but yes, pretty much I was about 11 when I decided I wanted to do this seriously.
I love that. I love that people were asking you when you're going to have more stories. I mean, that sense of affirmation and support and adulation, that's a really intoxicating kind of mix, especially at that age. Like, I'm getting recognized for something. And instead of being I'm like, wow, this is pretty cool, right?
Yeah, well, they didn't speak to me for any other reason than to see if I had a story.
Oh man. Oh god, but, kids can be cruel, man. That's it.
But then by the time I was 15, I'd written 3 full-length novels. They're not published. They will never be published in their current state.
Okay. Are they all horror stories, or are they adventures? What are they?
They're thrillers.
Oh, nice.
So I originally wanted to be a thriller suspense kind of writer. And I'd never even though I love horror so much, I'd never even considered writing it. And then it was always crime fiction and you know, things like that. And they always had little horror elements in it, which I've since discovered since re-looking at them. And then I think I had a break for about a decade from writing, because I just got consumed by work and life and things. And I just thought, you know what? One day I was talking to my husband and I said, I'm gonna write like something scary. And he was like, ooh, okay. So, and ever since then, I've just thought that's the genre for me. I love the genre, and I want to do my part to make that genre even better.
Fantastic. I love that. I love that you have novels at 15 that you are never going to publish. That was about the age. I was about 16 or so when I read or started writing my first novel. I'd never really written anything. And I was inspired. I went to a midnight showing of Dawn of the Dead with some friends, and that blew my mind. I'm like, oh my God, I just love this concept. So I began writing the sequel to Dawn of the Dead called Feast of the Dead. You know, oh,
Nice.
I got like 5 chapters in. I'm like, oh God, this is just shit. It's just horrible because you know I didn't know how to write. I was putting all my friends in there, as you know, and then I was also bringing in my love for like King Arthur and like all these. You know, it was the most ridiculous story. This post-apocalyptic zombie apocalypse, and these guys are running around like these like dune buggies, but they're also wielding swords. You know, it was just like, what the fuck, Mark?
That actually sounds a lot like Mad Max.
Well, this was before I had seen Mad Max. Mad Max didn't
Yeah.
come over to the into the States till after that. But yeah, it was not nearly as aggressive as Mad Max. You know, not nearly as polished as the Fury Road or even the Road Warrior, which I love Road Warrior. Just a great movie. But that's fantastic. So if ever those make the light of day, please let me know. Or if you get to them or even if you just can't ever bring yourself to publish them because they're just like they're 15-year-old manuscripts, you know. Still, I want to know. I just want to just share a couple pages of it. I just want to see that early writing. I think that would be fantastic.
I can give you a little rundown. So when I was younger, I had this obsession with different parts of the body that had to get injured in every story that I wrote. So inevitably, someone would be running through the woods, they would trip over, they would break their left ankle, and then later in the story, they would injure their right arm because symmetry. Right. And yeah, so
that's fantastic. I love it.
Basically, whatever the actual plot was, you know for certain that that's going to happen to the main character at some point. How they get to the woods doesn't matter, but they will be in the woods.
They're going to break their left down, right up.
But so the first one I did was called Angels Don't Fly. Right. So that's going to need.
That's a great title.
No.
Oh no! I love it.
It was all about second generation clones, right? So these kids had been. They were the naturally born product of their cloned parents, and they were raised in this facility underground. And the parents wanted to get their kids out of there because the kids were it was hypothesized that the kids would have special abilities because of their unique genetic makeup.
Interesting.
And so the parents stole the kids away, brainwashed them to forget all of their lives and fill their heads with fake memories until one day the corporation behind it all came to find the family, and it set there were 3 siblings, and it set the youngest one, me, off on this adventure with his 2 best friends, my actual best friends, and to try and unravel what was going on. Yeah, and then it goes like into limbo and like all sorts of weird stuff happens there.
That sounds better than the brand new reimagining of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre on Netflix. I would totally watch that if that was a movie.
Well,
it has, in the very beginning reminded me a little bit of like Brave New World, a little bit, that the concept of the clones. I thought, God, that's really ambitious for what, 15, 16 when you're writing this stuff?
Well, that one I was 13.
13. Wow. See, that's crazy. That's really awesome. That's I like that. I think we have those ideas when we're young and we're thinking, yeah, it's realizing those ideas and getting them out in a way that's competent. I think that's our challenge when we're 13, unless we were gifted and we've been writing our whole lives, right? You know, like yeah.
So as a 13-year-old, I lived with 2 brothers, my dad, and my mum and my sister. But so you can imagine, with a household made up mostly of men, we saw a lot of action movies. Sure. We saw a lot of Die Hard, a lot of all that stuff. And so I think subconsciously put a lot of that into my writing. So anything that could happen in one of those big blockbuster movies happened in my book. So we're talking like car chases, people falling off like bridges and then like swinging like Spider-Man on a rope that wasn't there a minute ago.
Right.
Like,
swinging through windows. Right. You got to have a catchphrase.
Crazy stuff.
That's great.
So I've actually thought about revisiting them and reworking them for a young adult audience, because I think that could be cool, but it would be a lot of work.
Yeah.
I read the first few pages and I just thought, I've grown a lot.
That's good. I mean, that shows growth as a writer. We tend to do that anyway. Like the first book I wrote was in a genre I never would have imagined writing, and it's a cozy mystery. I didn't even know what they were until I wrote one.
Nice.
Oh, thank you. But I knew I was going to make a 4-story arc, 4 books, seasonal, winter, spring, summer, and fall. And I had written a few other books in between. So I'm working on my second the Cozy Sister series now. And I wasn't sure about going back into this world. It felt a little like, can I do it again or whatever, because all my books have been kind of parts of other series. I've got a splatter Western, I've got a pulp horror, action. But what I noticed when I got back into writing the second Cozy is I still have concerns about the story. Like, am I going to be able to tell the story well? But I felt more confident in my prose, because it was, since I'm not writing in a wildly different genre, that was all felt experimental to me. But now that I'm back in this world, in this style, because you have to write a very specific style, which is very kind of clean and nice, but I felt a lot more confident going into it. And I think that's what happens as we write, as we mature as artists or creative people. The more we do, hopefully we get better at what we do,
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
That's the hope.
That's the hope, right? Exactly.
We tell ourselves that we've got there, but I don't know.
We have to wait those ugly days before our beta readers come back and say, Mark, we need to talk. Or what? That's like the dreaded words, like, oh, okay. Well, what makes a good horror story to you when you were considering writing horror? What is it that makes good horror? Other than a broken left leg angle and a broken right arm.
I mean, what else is there?
What? A broken right ankle? Oh my God. Yeah.
So I love body horror.
Oh, Cronenberg. Are you a Cronenberg fan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, video drama. The Fly. Oh my, yeah.
Yeah, The Fly is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
But I also love the psychological type horrors where you get those kind of isolated, like Lord of the Flies type thing,
mm-hmm.
and you see the development of the power struggle and the micro societies, and even though it's not classified as horror, that movie The Divide, if you haven't seen it, watch it, because it really is it really explores that kind of microcosm of society really well. So for me, that sort of stuff, seeing the development of like shifting power struggles, but as well as that, kind of making the familiar strange. So taking things that we're very familiar with and turning them right on their head, so we go, I've never thought about it that way before.
Yeah.
So an example is a book that I'm working on called Indentured, and it's a horror comedy about a pair of cursed dentures. And so I actually took advice from Stephen King on this one, because he said that something he does is he takes two things that you don't think go together, and he puts them together.
Sure.
So dentures and a curse.
Yeah.
And so that's the actual, like, the idea, but the story itself is about the reconnecting of an estranged father and son.
Okay.
So the aging father is in a nursing home and he needs new teeth, and the son, who's always paying for his medical bills and things, is like, fuck this, and he goes to a yard sale, or we call it a garage sale here.
We have
but
garage
goes
sales
to a
here too.
yard sale,
Right.
and he finds this perfect pair of dentures just sitting in the yard, and he thinks, great, save me a few $1,000s, takes them back to his father, he puts them in, and basically the wearer has to eat what the teeth wants them to eat. And so that is, the teeth have a craving for human flesh and blood, obviously. But what happens is the father starts to so it's kind of like a zombie-ish, a vampire-ish sort of story.
Yeah.
And he starts to reverse, like he starts to get healthy again.
Yeah.
And the son, he tells the son what's going on, because there's the moral dilemma of like, who do I eat? Because I'm going to eat someone, but who is it?
Right.
Like, let's take on a Dexter sort of moral code and figure out who the right.
Right. I mean, if you got to take somebody out, I mean, right.
So they start kind of working together and bonding over this, who do I eat scenario. So that's what the book's really about. But you can see what I mean about making the familiar a bit strange.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that concept, and I like how you brought all these together. That's a ripe for a movie, or at least a short, like as part of an anthology. That's fantastic.
I'll call Netflix now and just pitch it.
Yeah. Tell them, look, hey, it's David-Jack. I'm the guy who wrote the haunted denture story. That's right. Tell them I called. No, I love that. I guess please let me know when that's finished. Because this is just great. This is why I love doing this show, man. I get to hear all these great stories and things that people write, and this is fantastic. Well, how do you know when you've written something like scary? Like, when do you know, like, okay, yeah, this is pretty freaking scary?
Yeah, that's tricky for me to know. I feel like when you're writing something that it feels eerie, like when I'm writing it, I can kind of hear the scraping on the wall, or like the footsteps in the attic or something.
Or the dentures.
I'm like, yep. Yeah, because that's what they do actually.
Nice.
So they're alive, is they just chatter.
Nice.
And but I feel like I've succeeded when I get a little bit of a chill, and I go, like I can hear it, or I can feel someone watching me as I'm writing it.
Right. The words that you are reading and writing are conveying what your senses are telling you is spooky.
Yeah, the creation of the atmosphere,
right,
of the scene. Which is sometimes a little bit tricky.
Yes. Yeah. I kind of encountered that a little bit when I was working on my last book, called Death's Head, and that's the pulp action horror. My homage to the Phantom, the great pulp hero, the Phantom. And so it takes place in and near Haiti in the 1930s, and so there's voodoo and zombies and like the classic zombies, or zombie-like things, and so I didn't want to come out at first and say zombies. I'm trying to kind of create this atmosphere where it could be something else. And I remember writing this scene where it's something else. It's something controlling these zombies. This other kind of larger creature that kind of shambles out of the trees. And I remember writing that and putting the words down, and I just kind of floated that out on Facebook, like as a little teaser, like just to see like what's my audience response to this. And I got a pretty positive response overall. I'm like, okay, because I thought this is not bad. This might work, and that was my quick feedback. So I get that. I understand how you approach that. You got to feel something, the atmosphere that you are creating, and you're hoping that the words do the same thing in the mind of the reader.
Yeah.
No.
Because I was writing a short story a little while ago, and I took it to my writing group, and I was like, yeah, have a read of this, guys. And they were very underwhelmed. And I said, oh, so like, what, like, can you articulate to me what it is about it? Because I want to fix it. It's for a submission. I want to fix this. And the guy who runs the group, he just said, well, the stuff that you wanted to be scary was just too fast. And so, like, you know, there was a father trying to get his children out of a war zone, and you know, I think it said something like, you know, I looked across to my neighbor's yard and I just saw all their like severed limbs, and then I kept going, and he's like, we need to stop on the severed limbs.
Sure.
Like we need to, and I was like, but I'm trying to, like, it's a fast-paced scene, and like there's horror all around them, and so I think it can really depend on what the readers are expecting from you as well.
Because what might be horrific to you may not be horrific to them, and you're trying to create this movement, and they're wanting to slow down and take in the gruesomeness of it.
Can be a really kind of fickle thing.
Sure. Right. No, it's elusive. It kind of is sometimes, right? Horror, I think, is challenging to write. It's easy to go for the jump scare, but you got to create that atmosphere or that sense of menace or dread, and it's hard to scare yourself, you know, in a way. And it's important to have the audience feedback, you know, because we don't know what works sometimes and what doesn't. I think that's the mystery of writing. It's kind of what the boon and the bane of it is. We often don't know if it's going to work. And you know, just going back to Death's Head, like there was, I wanted to write it in 30 days. And it's a pulp, so it didn't take, you know, 30 days. I got it done in a month. And it was only one day where I felt like I was writing something good. Like I felt good about what I was writing. Like one day I'm like, yeah, I felt in it. The rest of the time, like I could tell like I was writing competent prose. Like, okay, this I know the words are good, but is it like doing anything? And like early feedback from the people who got it, only not too many people bought it. I don't know why. But like, come on, damn it, look at the cover, it's really good, it's a fun story. But the people who got it like contacted me like almost immediately saying, I started reading this and I couldn't put it down until I finished. I'm like, oh. And one of my readers said, who's also been a beta reader, and she's been reading everything that she's a staunch supporter of mine. And she goes, I don't want you writing the next cozy mystery now. I want you to write the sequel to this. I need to know what happens. Which I thought that I was so surprised, because again, I felt like nothing, like I have no idea if it works or not, you know? So
I think that's probably our confidence though, isn't it? Like we can feel good about something, but I think there's this innate sense of like, I don't want to be too cocky about this. And so we kind of downplay it a little bit.
Yeah. Well, you really don't know if it's working. And because I think, and hearing that from other people, that's why it's always surprising to me when I get praise for what things I've written. I'm like, I know when it comes from people I don't know, that's when I believe it. Because you know, like oh, I don't know who you are. And, wow, you like it, really? Are you sure? You know, and I'm like, it's still like, it befuddles me, and it's not false humility, but no, I get it, because you know, it was the first novel, my first, you know, cozy was the first novel. I'm like, I'm just kind of struggling my way. I have an idea, I have a plan, I got a nice outline, but I don't know if I'm going to get to where I need to go effectively. And so it's kind of nice to hear. And then when you start hearing multiple kind of like the same things being hit on, like we like the characters and we like the town, and it made me feel X, Y, or Z from multiple groups of people, then you're like, oh, okay, well, that's kind of reassuring in a way. Like, it's not,
absolutely,
you know, and so like, oh, well, okay, I guess I didn't do so badly after all, you know.
I think for me, it's just hard to like because for like, obviously writing is quite a personal thing, and you're putting it out there in the world for people to basically criticize.
Mhm.
You know, I like to think that people are more generous than I think they are, but you know,
Well, your
I
writing group doesn't
struggle.
seem to worry about that, so that's good. You
Well,
should,
they give me good, honest feedback, which is what
yeah,
I need for the
it's important.
drafting.
It's important.
Um, but it's difficult to put something that I've put my heart and soul into, you know, putting it out into the world, and I kind of expect people will go, "Oh, this is crap." Um, I don't know if that's just expecting the worst case scenario, but I got a review on my latest book, a couple of reviews, and it's sitting at 4.5 out of 5 so far, which, and they're saying similar things as well, like you were saying, and it makes me so happy. I
Yeah,
can't
like
even describe it.
it's an amazing feeling. You're right. There's a vulnerability to putting something out in the world, and especially we have this social media had made monsters out of a lot of people. They're really brave. They're the
Mm-hmm.
keyboard warriors who are really brave and the first to judge. And I don't feel like I'm in a competition with anybody. I'm like just trying to fly my own flag and see who salutes it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, there's enough room for everybody's flag, on top of
Oh,
the mountain. It's
absolutely.
like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and I just think it's really funny. And I'm like, look, if you didn't like it, that's fine. I'm not going to write to appease you. As long as I'm happy, I'm good.
Yeah.
So, and I just encourage them. I said, well, why don't you write your own book then? Go out there and do it. Good, bravo for you. Go write that bestseller.
Yeah.
Um, then they kind of look at me kind of funny, like, oh, and they just kind of walk away, like, I don't know how you're not flustered at all. I'm like, yeah, I don't care. That's
They're probably sitting there thinking, but what if someone hates what I do?
exactly right. Yes. Well, I said, well, that's the risk you take. Well, let's talk about, since you were working in this horror genre and you've created these stories, I'd like to talk about the idea of world building, this concept of world building. Like how do you design the world in which your characters live? How was that process, for you?
uh, I am a bit of a pantser, so I don't do a lot of planning on paper. Um, I usually will think about the characters and things before I do any writing. And so I know, okay, this guy is going to be a professor, or this guy is going to be such and such. And um, when it comes to the actual location, I really like to do stories set in isolation. So like a cabin in the woods, or where someone can break their ankle, or
They're all alone.
or you know, a hotel somewhere, or a school. I used to write a lot about hospitals,
Yeah.
because I think hospitals tend to have that kind of creepy vibe anyway. They're like
Sure.
riddled with
Right.
death.
Yeah, and they smell
Um,
funny. Yeah.
they do, and I think that it's somewhere. I like to write about places that people can recognize from their own lives,
Hmm.
and I think that that can save a lot of the world building, because it's
Yeah.
almost like a shared history or a shared
Sure.
experience.
Sure.
Um, but when it comes to actually like the physical design of somewhere, so the book I'm working on at the moment is set in a motel, but it's got this like cabin in the woods style facility underneath it.
Nice.
And I was writing it without much thought about the actual layout, like the physical layout of this space. And I think I got about halfway through the book and went, oh shit, this doesn't make any sense. So it would have been great for me to actually maybe even draw it or something instead of just writing, because I'm like, they're going down this way and it leads to there, and then suddenly they're like way over here. And so I had to go back and do a lot of rewrites.
Hmm.
So I
So there's
think
a
for me as
consistency
a,
then. Yes.
yeah, absolutely. And how, how they can actually get there, like physically.
Right. It's like playing a game of Resident Evil or Silent Hill.
Yeah.
You have to have the map up
And
somewhere. Like, okay, where am I at? Right.
so I think that's actually the process of world building is something I do need to work on a little bit. And that I'm trying to work on at the moment, just
Nice.
because I don't want to, yeah, I don't want to shortchange anyone who does stumble upon my books, you know.
Sure. Because you're going to get that one person's like, wait a minute, room 17 had petunias. It's not marigolds.
Yeah, exactly.
I found it. Right, exactly.
So and yeah, so it's something that I've thought a lot about too. So I wrote a short story that was published in a magazine, and it was a guy driving around the city, and I thought, everyone knows what a city looks like, so I didn't really need to describe it too much, but there are certain aspects of a city that can be useful to point out. So I tried to kind of, because it was a short story, get around the idea of, you know, naming streets or, you know, really specific buildings, so that the reader could kind of imagine it was a city that they'd been to.
Right, because short stories allow you to get in and get out quickly. That's the beauty of them. You know, you just start off with a punch.
I took that same approach for this novel, which was a mistake.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm almost finished the first draft, so there's plenty of time for me to fix it.
And now when you read it, you can like draw it out and just see if it all makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. So world building is an interesting one for me, because it's not really something that in the past I'd spent a lot of time thinking about, because I love the character driven kind of thing, but it's becoming clearer to me as the more I've been writing this, that the actual location is kind of embedded in that character development as well.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily separate things. So
right, there's an influence on place on the character, and the setting can be a character in and of itself. And
absolutely.
You know, I grew up once I was a teenager, I was playing Dungeons and Dragons and those kinds of things, so I always enjoyed building worlds and, you know, creating, you know, places. But when I first started working on this cozy mystery, I based it on my hometown, so I knew geographically where pretty much the whole settings were, you know, everything was going to be, and so in the play, you know, there's relative places like, you know, to the west or north, south, you know, all these things. But as I'm now working and expanding, each book expands more, I find myself like, I got to write it all down, draw it, like physically draw, like, what was the street like by the library? Like, what was because I got my book open, my first book here. I'm looking open on my computer. I've got 3 screens. I got my outline, my draft, and I got my first book. So I can like, what color character the eyes this person have, you know, or how does this person talk again, you know? And so then I also have a notebook with me, like drawing out the town, like I'm trying to remember where all the streets are. And so I figured by book 4, hopefully I'll have this all drawn out and there'll be a nice map in it, so that people who've been reading will at least see where everything is. Because I have to keep it straight. It's, if there nothing else, it's so that I'm consistent, because the people who like this book say the town is a character. They recognize, even though it's maybe not their town they grew up in, it's that small town charm that they like. And so everything needs to be in the same place every time. And there needs to be a consistency so that people feel connected to the town. So that was of necessity, you know, for this. And so that I get that. So your characters, I like that it's a character driven story. So how do you start and develop those characters? Because that's after place characters, they're all related. And since you said you're a pantser, so how do you go and develop your characters?
I do take influences from some people I know or some people I've met and maybe don't know, and kind of think that would, you know, people would love to read about that quirkiness or, you know, some sort of characteristic. And so I kind of just like make up this mental image of the person. And so if they're, you know, are they calm or are they angry and that sort of thing. So, but for the latest one, which is still in the draft stage, the way that I built the characters was through their relationships to other people. And so the 2 protagonists are a married couple, and they basically they live for each other. and so every touch has a meaning that really only they know about. And they've developed this language in looks. They can tell what each other are thinking just based on looks and things. And
they've been together for a
which
while
comes
then.
from it comes from being together for a long time.
Exactly. All the little tiny inside jokes, the things that that come with knowledge and experience and intimacy and
the
length of time.
Idiosyncrasies of their relationship. And
right.
So that's kind of how I've done it for those two. And then there obviously are a range of characters. Some of it's just done through reflection. If they're thinking about something, the way they even like pick up a coffee cup, for instance, like do they have the pinky up or not? Just little mannerisms that people have. The dialogue, the things that they actually will say, which I think is a fascinating thing to uncover as you write a character. Because when I started writing this one particular guy, he's quite evil. I thought, he's going to be really proper because he's like a university kind of type. And then I started to write something that he was saying. I'm like, no, this is all wrong. Like, because his life is a facade, right? Like he's evil. He has this public persona, but he's doing all this like really fucked up shit in the basement. So he's not necessarily going to talk in that same way. So I think that has a lot for me to do with building character as well.
Yeah, I like that. Sometimes I've found in creating a cast of characters, sometimes I don't know what they're going to be like until I start writing them. Until those first words come out of their mouths. And then sometimes it takes a little tweaking and adjusting. And then other times it's like full blown. Like I know before I write the first words, like my second book, Gage Black, I knew who this guy was. I could hear him in my head. I could hear the way he talked. And even though he was from Ohio, like I am, he still had a little bit of like a southern accent. He's kind of gravelly, and I knew what he was going to sound like, and I'm like, yeah, this guy's just a mean motherfucker, but he's only that way because of what happens to him. He's just this Union soldier who gets sent to prison in Hell, Arizona, for a crime he did not commit. And it's like the worst shithole in the world, and in the 3 years that he's there, he just turns into an inhuman monster, and he just wants revenge on the 5 people who sent him there. And by the end, it's like, it's just a splatter Western. I mean, I love revenge. It's like the best story in the world. Right. And so I just knew like, he's just full of hate, it was just so much fun. But I knew when I was creating characters for my cozy mystery, I knew about them in certain ways, but I didn't know how they were going to talk until I had the main character run into him. And as soon as that happens, sometimes it's just like magical, like, oh, this is how they talk, and this is who they are. And it's a crazy thing that happens because you can't plan every minute aspect of a story. I don't care how much you detail you plan it, because you still have to put word after word after word, sentence after sentence after sentence, and I just love that kind of, it's just kind of the inspiration or imagination, invention, creativity, meets discovery. All these things kind of happen at once.
So that's what happened with Harry Peck. When he meets vegan shaman for the first time, because I wasn't quite sure what this vegan shaman guy was. I just knew he was a shaman,
I love the name, by the way. I laughed out loud when I saw it. I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. Yes.
And then there's a scene where Harry is just so, he's very distraught and he needs help and all that. And they have an SMS or a text exchange. And I thought, I just wrote it. I just wrote, this is like, I'll just see how this fits. And as soon as I wrote it, I'm like, that's vegan shaman. He's this like eccentric, mysterious weirdo. Yes. I'm like, of course he is. And then the rest of it, when they physically met, it all just fell into place. And he's like taking his shirt off because that's just part of his process. And it just made sense to me. Like, of course he's going to do that.
Yeah.
Like he's rubbing himself against the furniture. Like, of course he is. And as I was writing it, I'm just like, I wish, me and Vegan Shaman would be best friends. I just know it.
That's fantastic. I had that moment working on the villain in Death's Head. I just kind of knew who he was, as of course, I'm a plotter, so I had it all written down, but I didn't know how he was going to speak until I got that first line out. And then it was like, oh, he's super intelligent. He's sardonic. He's sarcastic. He's full of contempt, and he's very condescending, but in a way that's funny. He's also very humorous. And it was like every line coming out of him was like delightful to write. It was like, oh, and that's why I have to make this a series. Like, I can't kill this character off. He's just too good,
Yeah.
But I'm glad that you mentioned about your vegan shaman, because my next question to you was going to be, which of your characters would you most like to have a drink with?
Yeah, definitely vegan shaman. He's got a kind of like a secret history for most of the book. We don't know much about him, but we know that he's been hurt. He's suffered a great deal. He's very good at shamaning, and I can't say that word properly. But he's so quirky and doesn't care what anyone thinks of him about it. He's just like, I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to help you because that's what I want to do with my life. And that's it.
And there we are. I'm the vegan shaman. There you go.
But I just think, if he were real, he'd have lots of stories to tell because he's been doing this for a while. He knows all about animal hauntings, and he's very, even though he cleanses, the poltergeist, the animal poltergeist and things, he's also very like emotional towards them. Like he understands why they're so upset and why they come to haunt people.
Okay.
So he's not trying to banish them. He's trying to help them move on.
Sure. It reminded me, I wanted to ask you earlier, and I'm glad you brought that up. Have you ever read the comic book called Animal Man from DC?
No.
Okay. The version, I think Peter Milligan wrote it in the late 80s, early 90s. Great series, and it reminded me a lot of the story that you loved as a kid. Animal Man has the ability to like communicate with animals, but he also absorbs like their powers and like can kind of transform into that kind of like that person. But so that reminded me of the shaman and his being able to communicate with the animals. Sorry, I just wanted to bring that up in case you ever get a chance to check out Animal Man. That would be might be an interesting read for you because it's really well written.
Yeah, cool. He doesn't actually like communicate with them. He just kind of like he can see the ghosts and things like that because he's a shaman, and he kind of just innately or inherently like understands their plight. Like, we need to figure out what it's so angry about so we can help it move on.
Yeah. And those prawns on the Barbie are going to be like, because I'm getting fucking cooked here. What do you think? Right? That's why I'm pissed. I'm being eaten. Damn it. That's great. That's great. I love the creativity and the inventiveness. And because there's like sparks of like beauty and genius in all of that. And it makes me very happy. Your characters, I'm delighted. Well, you're a pantser, so which for a plotter, I'm always astounded that people can just like yeah, I'll just start writing a book and then I'll just write it. Stephen King does that, and I get it. You know, he's written a few books. He can probably do it. But is there any kind of organization that you do at all? I mean, when you begin to think of a book, I mean, you have a character-driven story, but do you have any kind of like at least a rough outline or something that allows you to say, here's the story, here's the arc, here are the main themes or the
Yeah,
plots?
yeah. So I'm not a pure pantser. I think there's like a matrix that my writing group actually looked at it on YouTube once, and I was like, it's actually really interesting. So you've got the two ends of the spectrum, where it's just, you're a full plotter and you don't do anything without that full thing, or not. But so I think I'm somewhat in the middle because I have a general idea of the plot. I usually have an idea of the ending. And some of the main characters. And then I just think I'm just going to go and write it, see how it evolves on its own. And then with the latest book that's still drafting, I ended up having to put certain plot points, make notes about certain plot points, so I didn't lose focus because I wanted it to be I wanted it to be sharp rather than someone like Stephen King who can be a little unfocused sometimes.
Yeah, he's a Faulkner. Yeah, he just goes off. Right.
So, and I think for me, a really good book is where you can't put it down because it's focused, it's sharp, it's fast. Not necessarily fast paced, but fast, if that makes sense. And so, yeah, so I do a little bit of plotting after I've written a large part of it. So what I found once, I was writing a short story about like black market organ donations and selling people into sex slavery and things.
So a children's story.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But then I plotted every single thing out in dot point. And I've never touched it since because to me, the magic is gone.
Because you've already written it in your head in a way.
Yeah, well, the magic.
You write it like two. I see. Oh, I see. For your process, you kind of need that sense of, I have a direction. I'm not sure how I'm going to get there, but I'll get there, and be confident that you'll get there in how it's supposed to be.
Very flexible, loose.
I see.
Plotting.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
Like,
that makes sense.
The plot notes that I have are things like, someone's going to die in this scene. That's like,
okay.
Or like a particular character, like make this person die or make this happen. And so it's less structured and formulaic, and it's more just, I know that I want this to happen, and now I'm going to write to get there.
We're going to find out how we get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So I
talked with a writer last week who is also a pantser, and she was saying that she sometimes will have like a chapter outlines, but the outline might be chapter 4 fight. That's it. And what I find I think the reason why I'm an outliner is because I've spent a lot of years in academia as a student and also as an instructor, and English composition. So I taught the need for academic writing has to be orderly and cogent and coherent. And there needs to be a structure. And so, but for me, that's how I logically develop stuff. I'm a lister. I'll start brainstorming and writing all kinds of stuff. Then I'll take those ideas and develop those even more. And then I need to get all the stuff and like, okay, I have all the pieces of the puzzle. Now, how do I want to arrange them? But I still find that in the process of writing, that doesn't prevent me from exploring and kind of meandering and going. What that does is allow me to say, I've got a solid foundation. I don't have to worry about straying because I'll recognize if I'm getting too far off, I'll keep on doing it, but then I can always like cut that out and cannibalize it for something else, down the road, if necessary. But I just find that fascinating. That for
me, it's like a feel, if that makes sense. So I kind of feel my way through it, with the very basic plot points there that I just string together.
Interesting.
And so when I'm writing, I think a couple of days ago, I wrote couple of pages and I thought, doesn't feel right.
Mhm.
It just doesn't, like, it's not, it
Right.
doesn't feel like it's
know.
part of this story.
Interesting.
So, but I think that's a lot to do with different personality types as well.
Sure.
I mean, I worked in academia for about 10 years and published a few articles and wrote a book and things. And you're right, it's very structured.
Mm-hmm.
But what I found with the academic writing was that there was a very clear argument that I was needing to make, or a point that I was needing to make with, because I was in cultural studies. So it was very much, this is what the paper is about. These are the ways that I'm going to prove my argument.
Sure.
And nothing else
Right.
matters. So it's, for me, it was much easier to plan the academic writing than it is to plan something that I want to feel my way through.
Right. Here's my literature review. Here's my methodology. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand. And again, this is one of the most satisfying things about doing this show is learning these things and talking with writers like yourself and learning so many different ways of getting to the same end. You know, we all have such different processes, and like I said, you tried to do what I do, and it's like a dead in the water for you. It's like it's a corpse just sitting there like, you know.
I might pick it up later, but I know for a fact I'm going to delete all of those plot points,
right,
and just pick it up from where I left.
Sure, but that's what's amazing. This is your creative process, you know, and I guess because I've always been a big picture kind of person, like I need to see the framework and know where I'm going, know where the boundaries are. And then because there's enough going in there, you're going to have to fill in anyway. I mean, my current cozy, it's like a 26 page outline, color coded, but I'm going to be writing 400 pages. I mean, that doesn't compare. I still have to go from point A to point B and move along with prose and narration and dialogue, you know, and then still try to bring in the cozy element and the mystery element and move the character arcs. And, you know, all those things still have to be there.
With your 26 page outline, do you kind of go through it as you're writing and kind of like tick things off? Like, yes, I've done this. Is it like a listing type event for you?
Well, my cozies take place, each book story takes place in the course of a week. So what I have it broken down to, like Monday or whatever day it starts, these are the events, and then Tuesday these are the events, and then, you know, they're color coded. And then what I will do is just simply when I'm done with that event, I just kind of scroll it up, you know, the Word document. I just kind of scroll up and I just keep what I'm working on at that moment. But I kind of know it's just ticked off as I've moved on. But that allows me to I also like the idea of the structure, because since I know kind of what my themes are going to be and my larger story and my meta themes, to be all fancy, it allows me to leave breadcrumbs of those themes kind of earlier on, you know, and kind of work them through the story in a way that like M. Night Shyamalan would do. You know, and at the end, you're like, oh, I didn't realize these were breadcrumbs until you've seen the end. Right. And that's what I hope to do anyway. And
see, I do that as well with the I think Chuck Palahniuk calls it the gun, right? Like you plant a gun so you can have it explode, like, you know, have a fire later. And because I start with a pretty clear indication of the ending, I can always still leave these little hints that people will just read straight past, and then at the ending they'll go, oh fuck, he told us the whole time. He told us.
That's great. That makes total sense. If you know the ending, like, then you know how to get then you'll know what you're working toward. And there are some pantsers I've talked with who they said, I don't even know how it's going to end. And that just completely fucks with me, because like, then I go, how do you know when you're done? I guess then but they know, though, that their process tells them when it satisfies their need. Like I've told the story.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah.
then. And again, this is this is so wonderful, deliriously wonderful how different people bring their own creative abilities and talents and intuition to the same kind of form, the same kind of genre and
Yeah.
art, but approach
Yeah.
it in wildly different ways. It just gives me
Yeah.
joy to hear this stuff. And
Sometimes it's a bit anxiety inducing when I talk to people like yourself who are like, I plot absolutely everything, and I'm like,
well, it's not like everything. Well, in a course of a mystery, I mean, I have to develop the mystery. I have to see what happens in the course of the week because there's an ongoing story that takes place. And
yeah,
since I have a truncated time where everything kind of has to fit, I'm trying to place like the events in the order that develops and causes a sense of urgency and pushes the the character through what's going on in her life otherwise. But it's enough, like all the highlights are there. And like by now, some of the 26 pages, I will tell you, because I sometimes will get dialogue, like when I'm brainstorming or when I'm jotting notes. I have a book that I usually keep with me, and I just keep notes in it. I'll write down stuff, and I like, so anytime I get an idea, I'll just scribble it down. And sometimes I'll have complete like lines of dialogue for a scene that I haven't written yet. Like I
yeah,
know it's going to be in that scene, and so I'll just kind of carry it over and like paste it into my outline as is to remind me like this is where this dialogue goes. And there's also notes on characters and stuff, and that's a whole other thing.
yeah.
I got folders of those things, notes and stuff, because I'm trying, I got a list of the characters because it's the town. So I have all the places in the town and the people who like work in the candle shop and the pizza place, and I got to know their names and because this is part of the coziness of it. Like when you
And
go
they've all
down.
got their little histories and
Yeah, exactly. Right. When you
yeah,
go to Sugar's Cafe, you're going to know who you're going to be there. And there's going to be Ivory. She's going to be telling her stories, and,
yeah,
you're going to get the best barbecue you've ever had, So that's part of this, part of this process is making sure I keep all the track of all that. So no, I get it. I hope it didn't cause too much anxiety for you to hear all
no,
that. But so there's still ample room for that sense of discovery as we go. So
yeah,
but I feel that same anxiety when you're telling me I know how the end is, but the rest, so that at a that's what's fascinating to me. That's what I find so exhilarating is the creative process and how it differs from writer to writer, no matter what genre they're in. No, I find that fascinating, and just so that my outlines for my pulps were much smaller, much shorter, like 6 pages. So yeah, not
whatever works.
right, right. They're just these things are going to happen.
See, I think for me, in the way of like plotting or outlining, it's always running in the back of my mind what I'm working on. And so I might not write anything for a few days, but I leave the story open, and I'll just kind of scroll up and down and just reread a couple of passages here and there. And it kind of just it just mulls over in the back of my head. And then one day I'll just know what needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than like sitting there dedicating time to this is going to happen and then that's the next logical step.
Yeah.
So I kind of just, it's a very organic process for me.
Right.
It gets a little bit frustrating at times, to be sure, but I just can't do it the other way.
I get it. I though in a way, that's how I approach short story writing, is that I have an idea and I won't write an outline. I mean, it depends on how long the story is. If it's like 10,000 words or something, then I'll probably have like a brief outline because there are certain things I want to do. That's a story I started working on that I thought would be about 16 pages is probably going to end up being a novella. Very 50s science fiction style alien invasion story called The Clickers Are Coming, because that's what the sound the aliens make. It's kind of clicking sound. But
wasn't there another book called Clickers?
Oh, don't tell me this, dude. Oh, maybe.
Sorry.
Very well. No, it's okay. I started working on this story like, I don't know, 10 years ago, and I never finished it. So it's my own damn fault. I wrote like a bunch of pages, and I got to a point like, okay, I'll come back to it. And then, like, life comes in and you forget. But no, like, I tend to just have an idea. And I just would a short story, and I was like, yeah, I want to write a story about an evil ventriloquist doll because they're all evil. Who are we kidding? And then I have an idea, and then boom, I just start writing. And so I get that. For me, the short story process is very organic like that, because then that allows me to just kind of, it's a free for all, and I have moments. I might have an idea as a concept, like, yeah, this would be kind of cool, but let's just see how it happens. So I do understand to a degree.
Yeah, that's what I do for my novels.
Yeah, but trying to get on a novel like that would just like freak me out, man. I'd be like, nope, I need an outline. So, well, do you do any kind of research at all for your books?
Yes, but it's not before I write; it's during the writing.
Okay.
So, and I think this is just because I have a little bit of an aversion to researching after spending 6 years doing my PhD.
Yeah. Oh,
and it was like,
congratulations, doctor. I didn't know that you had a PhD. Congratulations.
Thanks.
If I had known, I would have introduced you as Dr. David-Jack Fletcher.
Well, I'm not Doctor of Horror, so
okay, that would be a good name, though. I am the Doctor of Horror.
But the thing that I want to actually achieve in my writing career is to make my fictional stuff come up before my academic stuff on Google. So
okay,
that's gonna be the happiest day of my life. But so what I research really is, now that I'm a bit more focused on the world building stuff, is geographical regions. So like realistically, how far out is a city from like a state forest? Like, are there any trends in that sort of, is there a common theme with the way that cities are built or towns are built in relation to those sorts of things? Research into different demons, because I love to write about demons. And
look at you going from being scared and 15 in the bed to writing about demons. Good for you, doctor.
I feel like me and demons just get along. Like, we just get each other,
But they're a much maligned breed. It's like pit bulls here in the United States. They're bad. There are no bad demons, just bad owners, right? No bad dogs, just bad owners. Yes, I agree.
But yeah, so because there are a lot of there are a lot of demons in different cultures, and I was writing a story about a child-eating demon, which fingers crossed gets accepted soon. And it was for a themed call out, and I thought, what is a child-eating? Like, I can't just say, oh, it's a child-eating demon. So I thought, I'm gonna do some real research into what sorts there are, which ones might fit my existing theme.
He looks like Barney the dinosaur, right? Yeah. Driving an ice cream truck. Please tell me. Right?
No.
Okay.
No. But I could rewrite it.
No.
But yeah, that's the sort of stuff I do research on. Okay. And I really enjoy exploring different cultures, understandings of like the demonic, and like folk horror.
You're being respectful of those beliefs and the cultures, and you have to do it right. You don't want to. I did the same thing while writing Death's Head, because it involves Haiti and voodoo and zombies. I did due diligence and studied a lot with the different Loa, the spirits. And since the book is called Death's Head, The Eye of Samedi, I wanted to make sure that Samedi, the king of the dead here, I wanted to make sure that I understood and wrote him as a character that was respectful of their religion. And knew enough about the religion that I could write about it and not be the ugly American who just doesn't, the tourist. And I hope I did. I really do. But because I thought, what a fascinating character. So I get it. And I love that aspect as well. The academic of me kind of comes out. And I just want to I want to know enough to where those details are important, that you want to get them right, but you don't want it to be so stuffy. I'm not watching a National Geographic documentary.
Yeah, it just needs to feel authentic.
Yes.
Like, you know what you're talking about, and now you're doing something with it.
Yeah.
It's not a history lesson or anything like that.
I get it. Do you have like a favorite time of day or evening to write?
No. And I think this is because I really just feel it. Like, if I'm having a bad day, or if I'm not quite in that right mood, like I didn't have my nap or something, it's not going to happen.
Sure.
So I do find that usually first thing in the morning, over a coffee, I can just start scrolling through and add a bit here and there. And but it's normally around probably like lunchtime that I just start feeling like I'm going to do some good work today.
Yeah.
And but last night, I mean, I was writing at about 5 or 6 o'clock. So yeah, it really just depends on my mood, how tired I'm feeling. I mean, I know other writers who schedule time, and they try to do that whole Stephen King thing where you write 2,000 words a day minimum or something.
Right.
I do not subscribe to that at all.
More power to him. I'd like to be that kind of writer. Just life is really busy and I can't do it.
Yeah, but he's a professional. Like, this is all he does, right?
Yeah, like once he got that first like big check for Carrie, and they gave him like a $175,000 advance, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna write. I'm quitting my fucking job. If someone handed me a couple $100,000, I'm quitting. I'm writing full time.
But I do know other writers who schedule time in their day, so they'll get up at, say, 5 a.m. They'll write for 2 hours, then they'll get their day started. And I tried it for a while, and I produced work, but it wasn't work that I was feeling.
Sure.
Like, I didn't like it, and I ended up rewriting it all anyway.
Yeah.
So I just thought, and this is what you were saying before about the range of processes that people go through.
You're like an intuitive writer. That's what comes. I think if I had to describe it, it's intuitive. You know when it feels good. You know when it's the right time to write, and you know when when you're getting there successfully, wherever it is you need to go. So you're just very in touch with your sensibilities of what you imagine a good story and how to tell it are.
Well, I hope so.
That's how I would describe you. I think your process. That's what it sounds like. It's what, and sometimes
it works.
Well, it seems to be for you. That's great. When you're writing, do you like listen to music, or do you have any other kinds of distractions, or do you like need it quiet, or how does that work for you?
If I'm in the zone, it doesn't matter what's going on around me. I remember only a few weeks ago, we had a friend around, and I was sitting at the dining table on my iPad, just writing. I seem to prefer writing on the iPad these days. And they were
with your thumbs, or do you have like a tiny? Do you?
No, I've got the keyboard and everything.
Oh, do you have a keyboard with your iPad?
Yeah.
Oh, like a separate attached keyboard, or like actually on the screen?
No, a separate attached.
Oh, okay. I've always seen people with their tablets, like their phones, and I'm like, how do you send a fucking text? No. Okay. No, that's why. That's why I asked, because I'm thinking
it's basically a laptop.
Gotcha. With the detachable keyboard. Yeah. Well, like in Japan, like the phone novels, I forget the word for them, but they're written by people who are like riding the train to work. They're really popular exploding genre, where people sit there on their phones and just type up novel. Oh no, my fingers are so bad, and my thumbs will be like fuck. fuck, you know. I had to turn off my autocorrect because it kept on putting duck. I'm like, no, I don't mean duck.
Not
No, take it
ever
off.
has anyone said duck in a text message.
Right, exactly. Right.
But yeah, so when our friend was around, they were having this chat, and I still don't know what it was about, because I was just writing, didn't hear a word. There are times though where I feel like I need to listen to music, like just in general. So I might even just take myself for a drive and just go for a drive and listen to music or something.
Kind of recharges you.
Yeah, I just, I've got some favorite bands. I'm like, I haven't heard their album for a while, so I'm just gonna go and like sing really loud and really bad.
Is that when you do the Mad?
Too.
Is that when you do the Mad Max stuff out in the driving around? Is that when you get your road rage?
I run over a lot of people.
Good. Only their left ankles, though, right, or their right arms.
Exactly,
man.
It's symmetry. But there are times where I will put some music on, but I'm not listening to it. It's just there.
Sure.
And I just get lost in what I'm writing.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing, because I used to catch the train to work, and what trains are like. Lots of different types of people, and it didn't matter. It's the same as if I'm reading a really good book, and just the outside world just vanishes. So
yeah, well, that's awesome. That's great. Just got a few more. I don't want to keep you because I'm interfering now with your lunchtime.
I'm having a great time.
Oh, good. Me too. How did it feel? Tell me how it felt the first time you saw your book in print. Very first time.
Surreal. I was just like, my dreams are coming true. Like it's all I've ever wanted. And I went around to a friend of mine has a publishing company, and so I went through his company, a little indie thing, and he was like, "Guess what arrived?" And I'm like, "Oh my god, don't tell me!" So I drove straight over there, and I was just hugged it to my chest, and I was just like, I can't believe it. Like, it's real. And the funny thing was, it had already been available on Amazon for about a week before the proof copy arrived, which I thought was quite fun. Yeah, it was funny. I think there was a mix up with something, but
yeah,
doesn't matter. So so it was already out, and I'd already been telling people, go and buy my book. And
hoping there aren't typos that you see in the proof copy, like, oh damn, page 97.
And well, I mean, I had it edited professionally, and I'm an editor as well, so I had a really good look through it, and we looked at the print PDF, the proof PDF before anything. So I was very confident that it was good to go.
Good.
But yeah, getting the proof copy was just like, it was just like magic. Like, this is a part of me.
Sure.
That I'm holding.
Right.
And I couldn't stop looking at it. Yes. And like flipping through the pages, and I just like was feeling it, and I'm like, I know what a book page feels like,
but somehow different when it's yours.
Page.
Yeah. When did that first book get published?
It was only in February this year.
Oh,
this month.
Oh, holy crap!
Yeah,
like, this is February. This won't come out until like April, I think. But wow, so this is really, really fresh.
It's very fresh.
Oh, okay.
So before this, I had a couple of stories in anthologies, and I had my PhD published, and so I've got the hard copies of that. But it was I can't really explain it, but it was a very different feeling with the PhD one, because I mean, that's selling well, but it's only selling to universities, right? And researchers. And when that was all said and done, I was very excited, but the books arrived, and I went, like, it's over.
Right.
Like, because because I finished my PhD and then it took 2 years for the book to come out, because it was with Palgrave Macmillan and it's a very big publishing company. They've got lots to do.
Wow.
And they outsource to Springer and all sorts of things. And
2 years, that sounds like an awful long time to wait.
So it kind of just became like, something that you think about every now and then and get the occasional update on.
Right. Hey, and that thing I wrote, is that going to come out or what?
Yeah, and people were like, how's your book? And I'm like, I don't know, because I had no control over the process.
Wow.
And so when it finally arrived, I was like, it's been 8 years of my life working on this, and I'm done. Like, this is the culmination of my research interests. It's finished. Right. But then with The Haunting of Harry Peck, it was almost the opposite. Like, this is the beginning. Like, this is my first one. I couldn't wait to get it out there, start to do some interviews, meet lots of people, talk about it, share it.
Yeah.
Take it to local bookshops.
When you start doing like the book shows and shops and like book signings and things, and that's an amazing feeling. It's a whole different thing when people who you don't know want to buy your book and then they ask you to sign it.
Even talking about it right now, I'm just like,
yes, yeah, it's delightful, and you get the personalize it. That's a really good feeling.
Since or before it even came out, I just had this feeling like, I don't know, like almost like a validation, like I've written this book. It is like, this is me. It's got a lot of my sense of humor in it, which is a bit dark and a bit dry. And like some kind of weird stuff that like my friends come to expect from me, but I'm not sure that the public as a whole would expect it.
Yeah, you'll find out, right? That's the thing. That's the amazing thing. Like
it's very exciting.
You'll get feedback one way or another.
And so now I'm planning to make it a trilogy. Just a trilogy of novellas, because I think with the type of story that it is, I don't want it to become a novel, because I worry that the actual concept will get a bit tired.
Sure.
And so with the trilogy of novellas, it leaves it a lot of room to evolve, and also have them as standalone. Yeah. So you don't necessarily have to read them in order.
You almost have the freedom of the short story in that too. You don't like. Yeah, I think
exactly.
Like the greatest novella I think ever written is I Am Legend. Richard Matheson.
Very good.
Yeah, I used to teach it in my classes, and the students are like, "Is it like the Will Smith movie?" I go, "No," and you'll be glad it's not. That piece of trash movie. I'm talking to you, Will Smith.
Wouldn't it be amazing if he watched this, though?
That'd be great. I know. I called Stephen King out on a previous episode. I'm like, that bastard Justice called me out. I better go on that show. Like, yeah, please do call me out.
Please do. Yeah,
that'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm sure Will Smith. I'm not sure if he had to write it, but whoever wrote that trash was, they must have not read the novel. They must have looked at the synopsis on the back of the book. That's the only thing I'm guessing, because it was, other than the name, there's like nothing. It was horrible. but anyway, well, kudos on your fresh, brand new book coming out. That is amazing. That's awesome. So now that you're just beginning this new chapter in your life, literally, physically, metaphysically, what is your writer fantasy?
I mean, New York Times bestseller, or actually what I think is probably more achievable is like a Netflix original or something like that.
I would watch this. I swear to God, I would watch this. When I read your synopsis, I'm like, oh, yeah. And I told my wife, I read it to her, and she's like, oh, that's brilliant. I go, I know. I go, I'm talking to this guy in a couple of days. She's like, oh, that's great. I'm like, yes, it is.
And so, you read the book, right?
I haven't read the book yet. No, I'm sorry. This is all fresh. Stuart, like, connect this in a couple of days. I've only had a few days. I've been I've been working on a graduate program. I'm finishing up another degree, or so. Sorry, I'm sorry, I haven't, but I will. I will read it. I do
That's the
promise you
main
that.
thing.
Yeah. Oh, I want to.
But so I've had a, like, because I had the 10-year hiatus, I've basically got this backlog of books that I'm going to write. So the one that I'm working on now, called Raven's Creek, it started out as a 5,000 word short story for one of those open calls that I saw on Facebook. And I hit about 6,000 and I went, nah, forget the open call. As much as I would have loved to have done it, there's a book in this. And that's probably the only one that's new, like the only idea that's new. Everything else I've kind of fantasized about and like been prepping and planning for the last 10 years. So I'm just really excited that I'm in the position now to start writing them.
It's a great place.
I had this, I probably shouldn't say too much about these ideas because someone could watch this and go, he hasn't written it yet, I'm going to take it.
Well, I have heard, and I don't know how true this is. I've heard that there is something to, at least with telling a story, writing a story, telling it to someone, because once you've spoken it all out, it like comes out of you. It's gone in a way. But I don't know if that's necessarily true or not.
Not for me.
I mean, my experience has been, as far as like the books that are pile up, I've got like 8, in the running after I got to finish this. About 3/4 of the way through a draft, the next book starts saying, look, it's time to start writing me, and I'm just like ready to be done. Like I've imagined the end 1,000 times in my mind. I just want to write it down. So no, I get it. I get the excitement of like, yeah, I got this, and then this is after this, and my next 5 books are already planned. So I totally get where you're coming from there. Yes. Well, that's awesome that you have the time, and then you have this burst of energy, and almost like, it's like a new lease on life, like this.
It really is.
Yeah, you're allowing yourself to have this new sense of freedom, and it's a completely different writing than academic writing. So, yeah.
Well, I my academic career kind of took a bit of a turn, so I wasn't really researching, and I wasn't really able to because I was working full time in a kind of a middle management role for a university, where I was overseeing lecturers and tutors and things, but I wasn't actually participating in in any academic disciplines. And I genuinely started to get depressed because this is not what I wanted to do with my life. I'm not adding anything to the university. I'm not achieving anything that I wanted to achieve anymore. And then something happened at work where I just thought, you know what? This is the final straw. Like, I'm ready to go now. And I went into because my husband Paul's working from home, and I went into the office, like stormed in, and I'm like, Paul, I want to quit my job. And he was like, oh, it's about time. And he said, you're going to focus on your writing? And I went, well, yeah. And he's like, oh, great. So that was all I needed to
well,
decide.
good for you, and good
so,
for him being such a supportive spouse.
Yeah, he's amazing.
Oh, well, that's great. Good for you.
And then since then, I've had about like 5 or 6 things published, and the book came out and almost finished the second one. So, and that's only been since September last year.
That's amazing. I mean, all the energy, and you have the freedom to do it. And I think that's part of the energy that comes with it. Like you have it, and now you're like unlimited in what you can do. So yeah, you're just going to pursue it. You have that ability to do it. So that's amazing. In and of itself is a writer fantasy for a lot of writers who are juggling, families and work and all those things. So
I mean, I still work.
Sure.
but it's much more flexible than it used to be, and it's not that same job. So
Yeah.
I'm a bit more connected to what I wanted to do, which was be connected to the students as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I just have so much more energy and zest for life now in general.
Yeah. It's going to show in your work. It really will.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Even though it's
it can't help but spill over. It can't help. The emotional state that we're in often somehow transfers into our writing to a degree, whether we bring it on ourselves in order to write someone who's depressed or angry or whatever. But it's hard to you can't contain that exuberance. It's going to come out in your writing.
Yeah. And I think that also makes it feel more authentic as well.
Yeah. It's you. You're not pretending anything. The story might be pretend, but your connection to the emotional connection to the words and to what's going on, all the emotions that are being expressed are real and genuine. And that's when you feel really good, connected to a piece of writing. Like, this is me. I'm spilled my guts out onto this book. That's how I feel about Gage Black. It's like, this is the first time I wrote without holding back, and because just to let people know this wasn't going to be pretty. Like on the acknowledgements page, I say the word cunt. It's like, so it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to say all the words here. So everything, but at the end, I felt so purged and so good and like so proud of what I'd done, even though this book frightens people and they won't read it because it goes to really dark places. For me, creatively, I know, I can't, I'm going to send you a copy. Don't worry. Yeah. And, like my wife stopped reading it. She's like, I can't get the images out of my head. I'm like, okay, I understand. Because I even told her, I said, don't read from page 117 to 126. You don't want to read that scene. But
sometimes that stuff can be really cathartic as a writer as well.
Yeah, it really was. It was necessary. And, but
do you ever get people asking you, like when you write really dark things like that, do you ever get people asking you, or maybe not asking you, but assuming that there's something wrong with you?
Yes.
Because I get this all the time when I say to people, oh, I'm an author, and they, oh, great. And they're expecting, like maybe vampires or like, the next Twilight or something. And I said, oh no, I write real horror and sometimes horror comedy. Oh, where do the ideas come from for that?
Are you okay? Are you in therapy? Right.
And I've noticed that there's no other genre really where people get scrutinized as an individual for writing what they write.
Right.
Even like romance and things, no one goes, oh, they must be a loveless soul. Like no one says things like that.
Yeah.
But it's as soon as you start writing about cutting someone's head off,
like,
oh boy, this guy's got problems.
I know, even though we've had these stories, we're not the only ones. I mean, I just say, look, read Titus Andronicus. I mean, if you can sit through that, I mean, Bill was at his game. We're talking mutilation and rape and cannibalism. That's Bill Shakespeare, kids. If you haven't read Titus Andronicus, go out and read it. And so, yes, I have had, there's a story I wrote called Late Fees. It was just I wrote in a couple hours. It was quick to be submitted for a anthology, Zombies in the Workplace. And it was based on my time spending when I worked at a video store years ago. And I thought, I likened the people who lined up every Tuesday was new release day, and they were waiting outside the doors before 10 o'clock and looking in, and I'm like taking perverted joy, like it's 9:58, motherfuckers. I'm not opening that door, you fucks.
Yeah.
And so the whole, the story is that about the new release day and people coming in, and the narrator is the zombie, and he's just this condescending, angry, like, just like pointing out all the horrible customers I ever had, and there's a scene that I knew when I wrote. I'm like, oh, this is Mark. This is pushing it even for you. I'm like, yeah, I know, man. I gotta do it. And I've had people like my sister-in-law, she was reading it, and then she got to that part and she literally dropped the story on the floor. She's like looked at me like this look of like disgust. Like she's like, I'm not going to read anymore. I took that as a great compliment. Like, good.
Yeah.
I moved you. I did something that made you disturbed.
You gave a visceral reaction.
Yes. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and I take great joy in that. So I do get people asking me like, why do you go to these dark places? I'm like, because I know it's pretend. It's not real. I mean, the whole world is full of horrors that are far worse than anything I can imagine. I mean,
have you seen the news?
Exactly. I mean, the fucking Catholic Church, and their NAMBLA membership, that's worse to me than anything I can imagine at all in my horror scope. So, I don't mind going to those depths. I mean, that's why horror is the most popular genre of film. It's like, yeah, people love to go get scared, So, but it being the producers of that, I'll consume it and I'm okay. I'm just a fan.
Yeah.
But you write that like, you must be twisted. No. That's great. And I'm glad you're getting that kickback too, because that means you're doing something right.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a story called Quietus, which quietus just means like to usher in death. And it was published in an anthology that was like my first anthology piece published, and I was just over the moon a couple of months ago before Christmas, I think. And a really good friend of mine who's very supportive, she got a copy, and I kept going, you read it? Did you read it? Did you read it? And so she read it, and we were talking over breakfast one morning, and she said, now I need to talk to you. And I said, oh no, is everything okay? And she said, I read your story. And I was like, oh, you hated it. And she said, it's not that I hated it. I can't stop thinking about it. It made me feel so uncomfortable and gross. And she said, like, even now when I talk to her and I mention it, she just goes, oh, I didn't like that one at all. And I actually, like you, I take that as a massive compliment, because the idea for that story was to make the reader uncomfortable, like really squirmy, uncomfortable.
Yes.
And it's pretty graphic body horror. So you would hope that it's not just gruesomeness, but like they can imagine their own bodies breaking down in the same way.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I really succeeded with that story.
Well, I already know the book swap we're gonna do afterwards. I want to see all this. I want to get it all. I love that. I definitely want to read that. Yes, I totally get that. And I've already planned. A lot of people know this because I've made no bones about it. After I do my cozy mystery, the 4 books, I'm doing what I've never seen done before. I'm writing a horror story in that same world with the same characters.
Oh, okay.
And I'm killing everybody, like the whole fucking town, like every single person in that town is going to die. And
so you're going to write your own fan fiction.
Yeah. And my wife's like, you can't do that. These people are going to be your head. I'm like, well, look, they know it's not going to be a cozy mystery from the goddamn cover of the book. And I'm going to tell them this is no cozy. And it's not going to be in a continuity. They can still read the 4 cozy, but that's why I'm introducing like 15 to 20 new characters in every book, because I don't have enough people to kill after only 1 book. I got to have more to kill. But to me, that is going to push some buttons for the people who've read all the cozies and I hope they fall in love with these characters, because then their deaths are going to be that much more impactful. And I want that sense of, oh my Jesus Christ, Mark. And I want that downward spiral of just despair. And that's emotionally what I'm going for in this book. So I hopefully, and I'll send a copy to you. It won't be years down the road, but you can let me know if I'm successful. So if you would like to
I
be a
will
beta
do that.
reader, that way, let me know if I make you squirm or if I make you uncomfortable. You know. Um, so anyway, just a few last things. We'll wrap things up. Do you have any advice, or what advice would you give for anyone who would like to be a writer?
Uh, I'm getting this question a lot lately, and I keep coming back to the same answer, which is do not give up and don't compromise. Do what you want to do as a writer, what's authentic for you. And if you're writing to try and make millions of dollars, you're probably not writing for the right reasons. So you need to, my advice is to do what feels right for you, what stories you need to tell. And then whatever outlet you can find that shares your vision, find it. Don't necessarily write with the goal of being the next J.K. Rowling or something. Yeah, and really don't compromise. So in my work as an editor, I recently had a manuscript where it was a fantasy manuscript, really good. And the author uses the word cunt to describe the vagina. And I'm like, well, it is the vagina.
Yeah.
But, and I said to her, look, I love that you've done this. But if you're wanting to go the mainstream route, agents aren't going to pick it up because it's too graphic for the mainstream public.
Sure. Right.
Because of the connotations of that word.
Yes.
And she was like, fine.
Yeah. Good for her.
I'm not compromising. And I'm like,
yes.
That's amazing. Yes. Like,
yes.
Great.
Right.
I don't want you to compromise. I just wanted to let you know that
right.
it's probably
Just
not going to be picked up.
yes. Yes. Letting you know that if you do this, here's what's going to happen. Well, kudos to her. Good for her.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just gives me like a greater sense of respect for that person as an individual.
Yeah.
And when I come across these indie authors and I read their stuff and I know they have told the story that they want to tell, to me that is just, it's really beautiful. It's like you've made something that is perfect to you.
Yeah.
And that to me is really important as a creator myself. So yeah, so my advice is don't compromise, don't give up. And if you have someone that reads your draft and says it was shit, then don't give them the draft again because they're not the right reader.
Yes.
If they can tell you, if they can give you constructive feedback, that's a different story entirely. But if they're just the type that says, didn't enjoy it,
right,
then don't let them impact you, because that level of negativity can really, really hurt. And so finding a way to separate yourself from that and saying, you know what, no, I know that this is good. I think that's a really important thing for an emerging writer.
That's great advice. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, to just
long-winded advice.
No, but it's accurate. It's true. It's honest. And I think that's why, like I said, that's why I take such joy in Gage Black, because it was my honesty. It was the first time I felt completely free and unfettered of all constraints, because I was didn't even know there was a genre called splatter western. I just wanted to write a grim and violent, really dark story fueled by hate and revenge. My favorite
I think
things.
Everyone wants to write that book, you know?
So, yeah.
We're just brave enough to admit it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I get it. Lastly, where can we find your books?
Okay, so Amazon is probably the easiest, but Booktopia. Do you guys use Booktopia in the US?
I'm not familiar with it. Is it apparently an online? It's a website.
It's an Australian online retailer.
Okay.
Book Depository. It's available at Walmart.
Good for your books are at Walmart.
I was like, what?
Wow.
It's on the Walmart website.
On
Obviously,
the website.
We don't have.
Oh, okay.
We don't have Walmart here, so I don't know if it's on the shelf or not. But it's definitely available on the website. What I've noticed is, because the publisher I went through, they go through Ingram Spark, which is so it's a really big place. And so it ends up coming out to about 60,000 bookshops worldwide.
Wow.
Which is really cool.
Yeah, good for you, man.
If you can ever find them all, but it trickles. So Amazon was a separate thing to Ingram Spark, so it was out on there immediately. And now we're finding that the data feed is slowly trickling. It's available in some German places,
Nice.
a couple in Italy.
Nice.
Amazon Japan.
Right.
But
it's nice when you see people from other countries picking up your books, or like someone who read my cozy mystery, I got on Amazon. She was in France. I'm like,
nice.
how the hell is someone in France knowing about my little book? Like, okay.
That's the magic of metadata, though, right?
I guess so, right?
Yeah.
She's willing to take a chance and plunk down some cash, and oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I've got a couple of friends in the US as well who've been sharing it around in their networks too. So, which is always nice.
And you're on Instagram, so you
yes.
can have a connection there if people want to reach out.
Well, I mean, if something that I want to do is, I noticed on some of these the Facebook groups that I'm in, that books of horror and things like that, that authors often do giveaways, but it's only to the US only. And I'm always devastated because I'm like, I don't mind. I really love supporting, so that's fine too. But there's something amazing about getting chosen for a free book. You know what I mean? You've won the lottery or something.
Yeah, I think they're because they're thinking, oh my God, it's going to cost me $50 to airmail this down to Australia, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I get that, but something that I want to do is if someone wants to buy a copy straight through me, by all means, and I'll give you a signed copy. I don't care where in the world you are, I'll ship it to you.
Wonderful.
Because for me, it's more about getting it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're interested enough that they want a signed copy, I've got to support that.
Sure. Right.
That's amazing to me that someone knows my name.
Right. Yes. And they want you to sign it. They want you to personalize it. Yes, so it's a beautiful thing.
If anyone ever does want a signed copy and they're outside Australia, just let me know, because I've got 100 copies sitting in the office in my house waiting for good homes.
Good. Excellent. Wonderful. Well, David-Jack, it has been an absolute pleasure to spend a couple hours to get to know you and talk with you tonight. I hope you've had a good time.
It's been really fun. We've covered so many different things, like gender politics, Stephen King,
yeah, all the good stuff,
all sorts of different things. It's been really cool.
Oh, well, I'm glad you had a good time, and it's been a joy to get to meet you. And I'm so excited about the success of your new book, and looking forward to reading it after the sign off. We'll be in touch. We'll just do a book swap. I'll send you a bunch of stuff, and you can send me anything you want.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, the PDFs are okay, are fine. We'll do it the cheap way. So, hey, you've been watching and listening to Unsane Radio. See, I was doing a commercial for my other podcast. You've been watching and listening to Between the Lines. You can listen to us on Unsane Radio, listen to full episodes, or download to your device. You can watch us on our YouTube page, which is where we're at right now, Between the Lines Podcast. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. And if you know someone who would like us, tell them about us. And if you're a writer who would like to join me for a chat, email me at betweenthelines54@yahoo.com. That's betweenthelines54@yahoo.com. And David-Jack, here's my cheesy outro. See you next time, Between the Lines.